Hey y'all, here we go again. Another day. What's that saying? Another day, another dollar. Another day, another verse. Another daily verse of the day. Because y'all do know in the spiritual world, faith is the currency. Like, you know how you have US money? In the spiritual world, faith is your currency. If you want to be rich spiritually, get some faith. Build up that faith. That's the moolah in spiritual. But anyway, the verse of the day says, it comes from Psalms 56, verse 3, and it says, "When I am afraid, I put my trust in you." The first thing I thought of was why and who. Who wrote this and why? Like, why do they feel so comfortable with that? Don't be afraid to ask why. It's okay to ask why and figure things out. Why is not saying you don't believe. Why is you want to have a deeper understanding. So I went to Psalms and I read the full chapter, and I figured out David is the person who wrote this. And then from what I know about David, I was like, oh, okay, it makes sense that David would say that because David has a track record with God. David has a relationship with God. God has delivered David from many things prior to this point. So it would make sense for David to say, when I am afraid, I put my trust in you, because he had experience with God deliverance. And during this time in David's life, David had a real complex life. Read about David, search him up. I feel like his stories are really authentic and relatable when you get down to the nitty gritty. But anyway, where was I going with this? David had a relationship with God, and during this time, King Saul was trying to have David killed, basically because King Saul was jealous. He was jealous of David, so he was trying to have David killed. So David went off running, and he went off into hiding. And somewhere during that time, David had wrote, "When I am afraid, I put my trust in you." And it made me think of a conversation that me and my son was having, about the witchcraft and stuff like that. And I said something that made him scared. And I was like, don't be scared, because God didn't give us a spirit of fear, because that's the scripture that I'm familiar with. But then when I read this, and I was like, I wish this scripture was in my head so I could have phrased it different, because what I told my son was we don't get scared. But when I read this in combination with the scripture, I know about God didn't give us the spirit of fear. It brings things into totality, a full picture of everything. So this says, "When I'm afraid." So this is context clues. It's signaling to me there are going to be times when I get afraid. And for David, there are many times he got afraid. Just like us, there are many times that we will be afraid. But when he is afraid, he put his trust in God. Not that he would never get afraid. And David realized that he has a choice, because in the scripture it said God didn't give us a spirit of fear. So we know this feeling that he's currently having is not coming from God, because God didn't give us that spirit. But David is actively choosing to put his trust in God. So he made a choice. Although this is what I'm hearing, this is what I'm feeling, I'm not going to let it lead me, because I know God didn't give us a spirit of fear. I'm choosing to put my trust in God, because God has shown me. I have been in a relationship with God for a while, and he has showed me that he is greater than all this that is going on. So even though I'm feeling like this right now, I know that if I put my trust in God, everything's going to be okay. And it was just that simple. And I feel like I talk a lot about relationship because I feel like it's important, because somebody in David's position wouldn't be so quick to say, "I put my trust in you," when their life is on the line. He was so confident in that, because he's been walking with God. He's been delivered from things with God for so long. He's built that relationship with God, and he know who God is really the point. David know who God is. So even though he was having these feelings and maybe some things trying to speak to him that was not of God, he still knew better to know that I'm not going to let that voice lead me. I'm going to not let this emotion lead me, because in the Bible it said that didn't come from God. But I do know God said that he'd give us peace. I do know that God is a deliverer. So David leaned in to what he knew about God despite his circumstances. When I'm afraid, I put my trust in you.